Hello everyone. I just want to add this video to the email that I'm just sending with some of the information about the final project, okay? So there's a couple of things I want to highlight to you. The first one is we're now 3 weeks out to the final project. We have this week and two more of classes, of regular classes, and then we have a final week, which is the exam weeks. And on that week, April 24th, as you know, it's going to be the you know, where this final project is due. Okay, so you have the work that you've been looking at in terms of Blackboard for this week. You're going to have work for next week as well, and then the final week is going to be a week that's going to look at kind of paradigmatic ideas, and something that I put together with the help of Athi, who's in this class, and that's going to look at, you know, it's going to be a kind of a closing way of looking at this issue of research and kind of what does it mean to have to think through a paradigm, and research is a paradigm. You're going to see more on that, but there's not going to be any assignments on that last week of classes. Okay, so there's going to be things for you to think about, to read. You can download, get the links, and even later, you know, do something later on with it over the summer. Obviously, you can go through it during that week, but there will be no assignments for you that final week of classes. So you have this week and assignments there this week. There's an assignment due today, and then you have next week. And in that meantime, obviously, you're continuing to work toward your final project, right? In 2 weeks, in a week and a half time, I'll send you an email reminding you exactly what that is. I'm going to take a look at the date here. But yes, by Monday the 14th, I want a draft of your final project, right? So you're gonna have something with all the details of that are included in this PDF that is here together with this email that you just got, where you see a very clear outline, and I'm going to walk you through this right now, of part 1, part 2, and part 3. And then you have 2 examples that I also sent. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those examples. They do not match exactly what is here, but they give you a sense of the flavor of what is necessary for you to do between now and the 24th. So it's near 4 weeks, but really kind of 3 weeks of classes, and then a little bit of the final exam week. Okay? So write that down, on April 14th, then I need a draft from all this. I'm going to give you comments. I'm going to say you still have ways on this. This is great. This is good. You need to revise some of this, and then you have 10 days, right, to complete the final project and deliver it to me as a PDF file via email. Okay, you need to do, there's no lateness on that. That's going to be April 24th at noon. That's the deadline, the absolute latest deadline. You can certainly send your final project before that to me, but that is the absolute last time and date. This is a significant part, obviously a culminating part of the project, right, of the class. So it's going to be have a significant impact on your final grades. Not that you're thinking about grades, right? You're just thinking about learning this process and thinking about putting this all together very nicely. So you can hear me continue to kind of talk over this process, but I want you to open the PDF that says the general guidelines for the final research project, and take a look with me of what is going to be needed there. Okay, so you're going to create a nice cover. It's going to be pretty, or it can be something simple and business-like. You're going to have right after that a table of contents that you're going to organize. So you have, introduction, and then ... page 1. You have statement of the problem, blah blah blah, like table of contents. And then you have 3 parts, as you already heard from me. I'm just now trying to kind of organize that. We have been meeting individually last week and this week, and I'm still meeting with some of you in the next few days to talk about the details on this. I'm still not heard from a couple of you, so you need to contact me. You know who you are, so that we can either set up an in-person or a Skype meeting of about 20 minutes to go over some of your work. But in order to do that, I need a revised version of all the things that you have. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about this process very carefully in the next 3 weeks. I can guarantee you, if you wait for the last week, if you wait for the last moment, you're not going to get a good grade on this. You're not going to be able to do this thoughtfully. And of course, this is preparation for later on for your capstone or your thesis. So it's in your best interest to do as much as you can with this. And the vast majority of you are moving forward with that very well in a really nice time frame. So, part one, you have what I propose here: 5 sections within, 5 subsections within part one. Right? There's an introduction, statement of the problem, purpose, questions, and methodology. You all knew that already before, right? So I'm just trying to codify this and then organize in a way that you can just take all this and put it in your own paper and then start working within your own research issues, right? The introduction should be a hook, right? You should give us a sense of the study, a sense of the background, right? The context, what it is that you're trying to look at. Avoid the I, think a little bit more about kind of the studies trying to do this, or start by saying, you know, thinking, for instance, Glenda's work is looking at charter schools. So start by saying charter schools have been growing in this country, blah, 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 right? So give us a sense of the picture. Music appreciation has been a problematic issue, blah, 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 blah. Learning methodologies has been an issue, blah, blah, blah. More significant, next paragraph, within the guitar environment, this, blah, we need to be looking at how informality, right? So those things, again, organize the introduction, something that captures our attention, that I can say as a reader, oh, this sounds interesting. Oh, I haven't thought about this, right? Oh, this is the kind of the background that is interesting, right? So again, you're going to see this introduction should be about 1.5 to maximum 3 pages, right? But it's going to give us a sense of the layout, so what's going to happen, what is around us. And then a statement of the problem that's more concise. There's 1 page or maybe even 2 or 3 paragraphs that again are going to talk not simply about the whole environment, right? Let's say, okay, the environment of motivation, the issues of all motivation and how they connect to education. But now we're going to start focusing more on the problem at hand. So, for instance, Priscilla is interested in the issue of curriculum, and what she perceives as the problem is the absence of a curricular interlay, right? So a curricular connection between different levels, or even the idea of a curricular cohesive. Research, where you are going to lay out what it is that you are going to try to do, right? How are you going to look at it? So now that you talked about in general about the context of motivation, now that you lay out some of the problems with motivation, let's say intrinsic, extrinsic, the limitations in the private studio, what are you trying to say? Well, the purpose of my project programs, of my research will be to investigate a particular charter school, to look at a curriculum in a particular school inside a major urban district in the southern part of the country, or it kind of rethink the idea of methods books based on this idea of peer-to-peer learning or interactive participation or creativity, right? All those kinds of things that are issues that you are taking on. This issue of what is the curricular relationship between a kind of a Cuban the Cuban model and a North American model, and is there any point of conflation between the two? Do they meet in any way? Right? All those, again, are purpose of the research. Again, different paragraphs that lay out and organize the kinds of aspects, right? The different aspects of your research. Always starting with the big picture and then kind of laying those out into the more specifics of your own project. The research questions, we're trying to keep it about 2 or 3 research questions. They, you see that I outlined they're not just any questions. They're certainly not interview questions, right? The research questions are the questions that frame what you're trying to say. They provide the researcher and anybody else that is reading this really the box that you put yourself in. In any kind of research has to have a particular box. It tries to address all the context, but at the end of the day, it needs a lens. It needs a way to look through something, right? And that lens, just as my glasses here, is defined by its borders. It's limited to a certain extent, right? And that is what you need to do. Otherwise, you cannot address all the kinds of things that might be involved in that research. You want to look at the curriculum in Miami-Dade, well, there's many aspects of that, right? There can be issues of policy and how that's organized. It can be an issue of history, what is the history in the past that has allowed this to take place or not take place. It can be an issue of administration. What are the limitations? Do principals talk to each other? Is the supervisor kind of actively engaged? It can be an issue of teachers. Do teachers in music talk to each other at different levels? Is there a sense that they understand what is needed in each one of those levels? How do you deal with variability, right? There's a million things. So you need to, each one in your own way and through your own research, need to focus what it is that you're trying to do, right? And that's why the research question is there. The research question is there to help you put that focus into your research, and you're going to later on organize your project, be it the capstone project or the thesis. Those, you're going to look back to those. The methodological approach here in the intro just is like a one-pager or so that presents a summary. It talks about, I'm going to use a case study because X, Y, and Z. I'm going to collect data through interviews, journals, and video observations, and I'm going to do this in, let's say, in 4 weeks during the fall semester, right? So you just give us a sense of what it is. The idea here are the 3 parts, and this is very important, is that somebody can come into the first part and say, ooh, let me take a look at what this project is. And they can just read that, and there's a certain level of self-reliance, right? That is sufficient to understand the whole thing, just on part 1. Now, if I got more interested in this and I say, I'm not so interested in what he or she are going to do, but I am interested in what is the literature behind, then I go to part 2. And part 2 will give, again, a little bit of a sense of what's going on here, right, and what you're trying to do. But it will also be self-supported, right? It will hold itself without any need to reference to anything else, right? So that's why you're going to see a little bit of repetition throughout the part 1, 2, 3. In any kind of thesis, the dissertation has some level of repetition in those terms, so that I can enter these particular parts according to what is more interesting to me as a reader. Okay, we talked a lot about literature review in parts. You're going to start with an introduction, 1 or 2 pages, where you're going to lay out all the different concepts that you're going to use. If you're looking at motivation, you're going to look at motivation, psychology, and behavior. You're going to look at then motivation in education, motivation in music, motivation in the private studio. Again, the funnel idea that we all been talking about, right? You know how to do that, but it starts with an introduction. This research, this study, this project tries to take a look at this issue, blah, blah, blah. In order to do that, I use the following research questions, blah, 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 blah. These issues are very significant, and they are basically, I'm going to basically organize them in 4 parts. Part 1 looks at, section 1 looks at, let's say, the conservatory model. Section 2 looks at the conservatory model in the Cuban tradition. Section 3 looks at how the conservatory model has been done in other Western nations. Section 4, it's the details of the conservatory model and how that conservatory model could be adapted for 21st century realities, right? So you laid out the literature review, and you're going to find things, 3 sources at minimum for each one of those sections, right? So that we have what you're going to start to see this week in this week's class, triangulation. So you can find different people. Just one person says it's just their opinion. You have another person now is starting to create consensus. You have a third source, and now you can actually start saying, oh, this really, there's some support to this, right? There's some validity to this, right? And then the methodology, which is part 3, you see that there's several elements there. You're going to start with a kind of 2 or 3 paragraph. You're going to go back to Creswell, and you're going to talk about qualitative research or mixed methods. So the 2 things that we are doing here in this course. So explain what qualitative research is, why, there's a lot of material there in Creswell. We can just look at it. Some of the examples that I'm sending together with this email also help you with that. And then your method. You're going to select whatever that you are going to use, and you're going to start just as we started already with our exercise from last week. You're going to explain what a case study is, action research, phenomenology. You're going to use citations. You're going to look for it not only in Creswell, but let's say if you're in case studies, you're going to look at Yin and Merriam. If you're in action research, you're going to look at Bernaford and Jensen, right? So forth and so on. Each one of those, as we know, the methodologies have different people that talked about that. Phenomenology, there's Mustakas, there's others, right? So you're going to use their citations, you're going to use quotes to help us define what it is, and then you're going to talk about why this is significant and why that is appropriate for your study. Then you're going to go into data collection. You're going to say, in order to collect this data, I'm going to use journaling, I'm going to use observations, there's video observations of my teaching. Let's say we're talking about an action research, and I'm going to, at the end, have a set, a focus group or a set of interviews with my students. So you lay that out, why you're doing that, how would that help you in get information about the problem that you're trying to address with your research, and then you're going to talk about video, let's say interviewing, you're going to semi-structured interviews, and according to statements, semi-structured interviews are this, and that, they happen in this and this way. So you have a short little paragraph for each one of them that gives us a sense that you understand what you would be doing. If you have a really specific context, you can speak a little bit more about the context, otherwise this is optional. Think a little bit about your role and see what the examples say about the role of the researcher. In some cases this will be more significant than others, but it's an important element to consider. What are the kind of ethical considerations you need to have? What are you thinking when you engage in the ethics of research? We talked about this earlier on. There's a couple of articles on that in the class. And then the last is the kinds of stuff that we're looking at this week and next week, which is coding, analyzing, triangulation, and validity. Right? Those are the kinds of things that will probably be the last things that you add, because we are part of the readings and the things that we're doing this week and next week. Okay, so please pay attention to all that. The references then at the end. So take a look at this. It's all clearly laid out over there, so you stop stressing out about what to do and how. The examples that I sent are from, examples from Ari and Jacobo, and how they organized their projects a year or so ago when they took that class. At that time, you're going to see that there are certain things that are slightly different than them. I have not been asking you to think about the significance of your research. We'll develop that more later. You're going to see that they start with an introduction, and then they put the methods and then the literature review. I'm now asking you to reverse. I'm asking you to have clear sets, a cover, a table of contents, part 1, introduction, and then each one of the subheadings which they have, right? But so that's not to be copied, obviously, right? But that's to serve as a real guideline for you, how to write, all the citations, spacing, formatting, as well as some insight on how they dealt with Creswell with others, that I think will be very helpful to you. Okay, the purpose again here is that you really think and link all these ideas to what the project that you would like to do. and start thinking about how would you do that? How would that be feasible for you to do next year when we are going to be either deciding to do a capstone or a thesis. All right. So I hope this is helpful. Again, we are still to meet with a couple of you, and I'm always around, so give me a call um, or send me an email. Put on your calendars right now, April 24th, noon, Wednesday, April 24th, noon. That's the final deadline. There will be no late work. I just will not accept it. April 14th, Monday, April 14th. Yes. Oh, sorry. I'm saying 24th, and it's not. It's April 23rd, Wednesday, April 23rd. Oh my God, April 23rd. So, and then April 14th is the the draft with all these elements. April 14th, Monday, April 14th, and Wednesday, April 23rd are the two deadlines. Okay? Sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye.